We are now talking to former NFL receiver, Emmy-award winner for Searching for the Summit, Mark Pattison. Mark, what's going on, bud?
How you doing? Hey, let me ask you this, guys. Where is this show being broadcast? I assume it's the East Coast, correct?
It is New York, my friend, Long Island, New Yorker.
I love that, love that, love that your number one fan, Kenny's out there on standby, ready to jump in when you guys let him in.
Well, he's ready to drink, he's ready to smoke, he's ready to chase geese into the water. So
love it, love it, love it,
Wow.
love it. I was back in New York in May for the Emmy-award winning show, or the Emmys, and that's when the Searching for the Summit, we won the Best Picture for my Everest climb, and so loved the energy. It was great to be traveling again. It was great to be back in New York City and feeling that energy, like I said, with all the people cruising down the street and going cuckoo. So loved it when I was out there.
I've been to the Sports Emmy Awards, and I didn't go to the Emmy Awards last year, but I experienced it. It's wonderful. You meet so many people at those award shows. The time that I went there, I met Michael Strahan and Alex Rodriguez, and they were some of the hosts of the show. So it was fun, and you get to meet different analysts and sports guys at those industry events. But when I heard that we were getting you on, we were very excited, by the way. So we are talking still to the former NFL receiver, and Emmy Award winner for Searching for the Summit, Mark Pattison. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about your climbing, over the years. I mean, obviously, Everest, I never, ever did that. That is scary. People have died on Mount Everest. Yeah. What was it like climbing Mount Everest? What was it like doing, obviously, a story of Searching the Summit?
Yeah, well, let's back it just a little bit. So I did play in the NFL for 5 years, and very blessed and grateful to have just had my time there. Everybody has a different trajectory, and that was mine. And then life happened, and had kids, and got married, and did all those things. About 10 years ago, going through a rough patch in my life. But at the end of the day, we all go through rough patches, and if you haven't, it's coming, right? So I set out at that time to kind of pull myself out of it, set up a big ass goal. And I said, I want to become the first NFL player to climb the 7 summits. And so the 7 summits, for those of you who don't know, are the highest mountain on each continent. Obviously, we have 7 continents. And so, around the globe I went. It took me almost 10 years to complete that. And so the last one, of course, was Mount Everest. The way that I originally designed this to go was it was by difficulty and experience and learning the ropes and learning how to use my crampons and ice axe and scale up on lines and go over crevasses and fall into them and get out of them and all that kind of stuff. And so, after 10 years, after climbing literally hundreds and hundreds of mountains, not just the 7, of course, but, all the ones I was training on, I finally was ready to take on Mount Everest in 2020. And as we all know, it was March 2020 when I had actually driven out from Sun Valley, Idaho, where I live, to LA, where I was going to launch at the end of March, and about mid-March is when COVID hit. And that's where, if we all go back there and think about it, that's where, every day it got exponentially more crazy. People were dying. We didn't have a vaccine. We didn't know what it was, how we're going to fix this. All these restaurants and shops, everything else started shutting down. And so that got pushed out a year. And things always happen for a reason, I'm convinced. In January of 2021, I got a call from the NFL, and they said, hey, we really want to do a story on your Everest ascent and cover that. And originally, the idea was to cover this. It was going to be 5 to 7 minutes. This was going to be done by NFL 360. And they flew over here to Sun Valley, and they got very involved. They were interviewing myself. They were with Jim Mora, my best friend, who was training with me at the time. Now he's the head coach at UConn. And up and down we went, and they started into this project. And by the end of the whole project, it ended up being a full documentary, 30 minutes, for NFL, which is how they slot those things in on their show, NFL 360. And so anyways, I had no clue when I was climbing, when we were shooting the movie. I did most of the filming up in the mountain because the NFL security had blocked them from coming to Mount Everest because there was a huge COVID outbreak. And so that was shut down. I had no clue that when they put the whole film together that it would turn out like it did. They called it Searching for the Summit, and somebody in that whole organization submitted it for a Emmy. And I thought that was super cool. We were nominated for Best Picture and Best Cinematography, which is cool because I did a lot of that shooting on the mountain. And then we get there, and you know, I'm hanging out with Mike Tirico and Bob Costas and all those guys. You know, you were just talking about, you know, all the different connections that were there. And the way that the whole configuration was, I didn't get an invite to go there until kind of a few days before because they didn't have a seat because there was all this demand for the last couple of years because of COVID. And so I'm sitting up at the front. And Mike Tirico gets up there and he goes, I can't believe it. Searching for the Summit, NFL 360. You guys are on a roll. That was the fourth one that we won that night. And I got up there. I'm standing on stage by myself, you know, until the other guys, the producers and everybody else. It was just amazing to be, you know, again, in front of Bob Costas and Leslie Visser and all these people for years and years and years I've seen up on stage. And, you know, I was there collecting probably the biggest prize there is of the night. You know, of course, there's editing and sound, and they're all important and they're all matter. But to get the best picture is pretty damn cool. And so I've got a big ass statue of the Emmy coming my way here pretty soon.
Awesome. Congratulations on that.
Absolutely.
All the feats, everything with the 7 summits. That's amazing.
Your whole career, too, as an NFL player. 5 years is still a long time in the NFL. An average NFL player only plays 3 years. You played 5. So,
yeah, I want to go back and address something else that you said too, because this is one of the crazy things. I mean, we can go as deep as you want to go on Mount Everest, but in 2019, I was in Antarctica. Like, who goes to Antarctica, right? Except for penguins. And so I'm down there, and there's a mountain called Mount Vinson, and Vinson is the highest point on Antarctica. It's just crazy. Like, just the adventure of getting there is a whole nother story. But there's a guy that was my tent mate and my hotel mate when we first landed in Chile. This place called Punta Arenas was where we took a plane from point A to point B to land on the ice in Antarctica. We got to know each other. We're you know, tent mates, like I said, for 3 weeks, and climbed the mountain and got down. And during that time on that climb, you know, he wasn't very strong and he struggled a lot. But at the end of the day, he did make it. So congrats on that. 3 months later, he was going to go from, you know, he was going to fly back to his hometown in Salt Lake City, and then go from Salt Lake City over to Everest and take that on. He won with a low-cost carrier expedition team, you know, over there. He got up there, was there 2 months, just like I was. And he ended up getting to the top, raised his hand straight in the air, fell over and died. And when I was making my final ascent on that day, May 23rd, 2021, you know, I had to step over Don Cash. And, you know, if that's not just a crazy, eerie thing to be thinking about, because, you know, all these competitive things that we do, you know, you go play hoops, it really doesn't matter what level you play. You're pretty much not going to die, you know, on a football field and things like that. And to be stepping over dead bodies, not just him, there was other guys too. I had another guy at 26,500 feet, Camp 4, dead guy laying 6 feet from me. Yeah, it's just a weird mindset that you have to put your mind into so that you don't freak out so much about that moment, dead people laying around. And you just got to like focus on the task at hand to get you to the top and back down safely. It's a very dangerous environment, and I'm very lucky that I'm sitting here today talking to you guys.
Within the 7 summits, I know you're talking about Everest specifically just now, but what was the most unique thing you encountered, like just judging all the different mountains, all different parts of the world, geographic diversity that it could be? Did that contribute to maybe why it was more of a challenge than the others, any one of the 7?
Well, it's a really good question. And, you know, the kind of the net is that Everest is exponentially way more difficult. Now, number 2 on the list is Denali, and that's tough too. It took me 21 days to get up and down that mountain. Actually, I'd been up there in 2017. I summited in 2018. And on 2017, we ran into minus 80-degree weather. You know, if you can appreciate being up in Alaska, and that Arctic swirl that gets going around, and we're up there in May, and it just gets so unbelievably cold and storms that come in. But at the end of the day, you know, 21 days is a pretty short time. I mean, we got locked down, and it wasn't fun, and we had to carry 137 pounds on our back to get up just in position to try to make it to the summit. We didn't make that happen in 2017. In 2018, we had Bluebird Day all the way. It was still cold, but we made it. And there's challenging things. There's an ice wall that's 800 feet that you got to climb up. You got to climb over this big crevasse to get into that. And then you're on a fixed line to get, you know, through that 800 feet. It's extremely steep, and there's a lot of people that die up there. But when you go to Mount Everest, you're talking about 2 months of suffering, you know, and that's number one, what makes it unique when we're talking about big mountain expeditions. Number 2, you got to think about, you're not, you know, coming back and like Kenny having a drink and a smoke, you know, it's freeze dried food. You know, it's a tough way to live and survive on types of foods that you're not used to eating and consuming, and trying to keep up the calories, considering how many calories you're burning. You guys are on Long Island right now, and you guys are at in terms of elevation, you're at like 0 feet right now, right?
That's right.
Imagine this: if you guys look straight up in the sky, and I'm addressing Kenny when I say that, 17,500 feet. Think about that. Living at 17,500 feet for 2 months, and so a lot of people have this. There's a brain and also a lung issue, pulmonary edema and cerebral edema, where people's there's not enough oxygen that's going to the brain, and people shut down. And we were flying people off left and right, and then you got to contend with the Kumba ice fall, and that's basically a 2,000 foot straight up frozen glacier of about 30-foot ice columns that are collapsing every day. I went through that thing 5 times, up and down, up and down, up and down over those 2 months. There's not one time that I took the same route. Every single time we had to go through a different route because the routes that they had set all collapsed. You're going down crevasses, you're coming back out, you're going up these huge ice walls. There's avalanches coming down on you every single day. The weather is very unpredictable. And then you make it to that next camp up there, Camp 1, Camp 2. Now you're kind of in that zone where it's relatively safe, but now you're still at 22,000, 23,000 feet. And then you got to go climb the Lhotse face. And if you can imagine an ice rink, and if you could tilt it 45 degrees. And on the last rotation that we went en route to the top, we got caught in a cyclone for 3 days. So imagine being on a 45 degrees ice slope in a tent for 3 days in a cyclone, couldn't get out of your tent, couldn't get out of your sleeping bag. I mean, it was terrifying. So there's just all these things that added into it just because, it's such an extreme environment. And then when you get up to the top, that's where the jet stream goes or flies, at 26,500 feet. In 2 weeks during the fall, 2 weeks during the springtime, the jet stream rises above 26,000 feet, actually rises above 29,000 feet at the top. Theoretically, it's not exact. It might be a day, it might be 10 days, it might be 2 days and then skip and then come back down, and it's all over the board like it was for us. And coming out of the cyclone and then making a ditch for the top and dealing with all the altitude, and now you're breathing oxygen masks like you see astronauts or something. It's just a whole exponential different level that you got to deal with and contend.
As everybody knows, we are talking to former NFL receiver, Emmy Award winner for Searching for the Summit, Mark Pattison. Mark, obviously you trained as an NFL player, and it takes a lot out of your body. It's a physical training, mental training. What is it like training for the NFL and training to get on a football field? And what was it like training and getting ready to climb a big mountain?
Well, that's a great question. You guys are firing off great questions, and I appreciate that. One of the things that I learned a lot from is my head coach, Don James. For those that don't remember Don James, he was a coach at Washington where I played, and he had come up or adapted a version that John Wooden, the famous basketball coach down at UCLA, had called the Pyramid of Success. And really all things that I've done in life, from the NFL to climbing mountains to making this film to being an executive at Sports Illustrated, it all has the same pattern. And there's basically 25 different building blocks. And if you don't take care of each one of these building blocks, getting bigger, getting faster, getting stronger, studying film, staying in class, doing all those types of things on the mountain, of learning how to use your ice axe and put on crampons and the different kind of outfits, and how to eat and how to hydrate yourself. There's all these different things in there. At the very top of that rung is competitive greatness. And you've got levels like Michael Jordan, which are the ultimate example of competitive greatness, right? But the bottom line, what that really means is that you love the process. And that's the number one element in all these things that you have to do is love the process. The major difference, and there's a lot of similarities between the NFL and climbing mountains, but you got to get vertical. There's just no substitute.